Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well today, and I hope you're all set to start with Unit 2 of the Indian Contract Act 1872. The concept in this unit revolves around the topic of consideration. I hope this is ringing a bell. We learnt the meaning of consideration in Unit 1 when we studied the essential elements of a valid contract, and consideration, I believe, is one of the most important things in life. Okay, I want you to understand this at the very initial stage of your course or life or whatever it is, that something in return is important. At least I think it is, I believe it is. And here, something in return refers to you giving it as well as you receiving it. So let's commence with Unit 2, which is a significantly important unit. It's a very short unit as such, but there are three topics that we're going to look at in detail. But first, we'll understand the level of consideration a little more in depth. I hope we're ready. Keep your notes ready with you. Keep a pen in hand, pencil in hand, highlighter in hand, whatever works for you. And let's begin with Unit 2, consideration. So we have a first example here, which I have taken. एक second. Yes, I think it should be okay now. Absolutely. So our first example here, there is a KVC ka office and there is you. You approach our office to pay the fees because we are providing coaching to you. Now, when we provide the coaching to you, we are promising to give you the coaching. So in that case, we become the promiser. KVC becomes the promiser. Any party who promises to do something becomes the promiser. And you are at the receiving end of this promise, and therefore we are going to call you promisee. So there is a promiser and there is a promisee. We provide the coaching to you and you provide the fees to us. So for us, the fees becomes something in return, and for you, for the fees that you have paid, the coaching becomes something in return. And this topic is called as consideration, which we're going to study in detail right now. So the meaning of consideration is the price agreed to be paid by the promisee for the obligation of the promiser. Obligation refers to duty. For the duty that we are performing towards you, you are paying us a certain price, and this concept is called as consideration, which means something in return in English, and in Latin, if you remember, we've already studied this, quid pro quo, which means consideration, which means something in return. And the concept of consideration, the definition of consideration, is given under section 2 clause D of the Indian Contract Act 1872. A trick to remember this, CD. Remember CD? Consideration refers to C and D is the subsection in which it is defined. So section 2 subsection D defines the concept of consideration, the price which is agreed to be paid by the promisee for the obligation or for the duty of the promiser is called as consideration. Now, this consideration that we have, it could be something in return, right? Now, something in return could be for anything. Agar you want me to do something, you will give me something in return. But there is also a possibility that you don't want me to do something and I want something in return for that as well. So, consideration could be to do an act. It could be a situation where you want me to do something, like taking the previous example, you want KVC to take up the course for you, to take up foundation classes for you, and that becomes doing something. So you are giving us consideration for doing something for you. But what if I told you that sometimes people take consideration not to do something as well? Let's take an example, okay? Now, suppose I am going to set up a new shop in a particular complex where you already have a shop. You already have a shop since a couple of years in that particular complex. Now, my coming into that particular complex could affect your business to a certain extent. Man lete ki it does. So what you do is, you make an offer to me that you are ready to pay me 1 lakh rupees, and in exchange, what am I going to do? I am not going to open my shop in your complex. So what you're asking me to do here is not to do something. The consideration is given so that I do not open the particular shop in the complex. So this is an example for the other side of consideration where you are asking me not to do something, and this not to do something in technical terms is called as abstinence. What is abstinence? Abstinence means you are stopping a person from doing something. In our case, what are you stopping me from doing? You are stopping me from opening a particular shop in the complex that you already have. So with this, we understand that consideration could be to do something which is like a positive consideration. At the same time, if it's not something illegal, consideration could also be for abstinence. What is abstinence? A situation where you are abstaining or stopping someone from doing something and giving them something in return for the same. So this is the fundamental meaning of consideration, basically revolving around the idea that something in return must exist for a contract to be valid. But of course, we like to make our concepts and fundamentals very clear. So to understand the concept of consideration in detail, let's move on to the next topic, which is legal rules for a valid consideration. Now, this particular topic from your exam point of view is काफी important, and sometimes in the past few attempts, ICAI has also made this a direct question. Direct question matlab they just question you for about 7 marks. What are the legal rules for a valid consideration? And in that case, you would have to write all the points that are mentioned here. We will study those points as well as we learn it conceptually, because there are a few points here from my perspective. It is important even from the case study angle. So we'll start off with the first point. These are legal rules for valid consideration. The first point, consideration must move at the desire of the promisor. Now we know that there are two parties, promisor hai and promisee hai. Who decides the consideration in a contract? Who decides कि they want to enter into a contract? It has to be the promisor. Consideration must be at the desire of the promisor. Going back to our initial example, KVC is offering to take up CA foundation classes for you, and we are proceeding with that offer. So it is at our desire that the contract is being made. We are proposing that to you. Of course, the consideration is coming from you or coming from a third person. That's a second category point. But the desire for that consideration is coming from the promisor. So we decide the fact that we are going to provide coaching for you. Also, the price of the coaching classes is also decided by us. It's not like, theek hai, you are this much satisfied with the classes, so you will pay that particular amount of fees. That's not how it works. The consideration should be decided, or it should be moving at the desire of the promisor and not at the desire of the third party, not even at the desire of the promisee for that matter. Promisee is the party who is going to pay the consideration, or the third party is going to be the party who's going to pay the consideration, but the desire must be of the promisor. And one more part here, consideration should not be voluntary. Very simple point. Okay, let's say you are studying in college, and one fine day I decide to walk into your premises, and in conversation with you, I decide to do something for you. Okay, let's say we sit and talk, and usme the conversation goes in such a flow that I decide to help you out in your 12th standard exams. I clear concepts for you, I clear your doubts for you, I teach you an entire subject. Chalo, मान लेते कि I teach you an entire subject. And at the end of the particular arrangement that we have, I tell you कि now you have to pay me 10,000 for whatever I did for you. When did you ask me to do it? Did you ask me to do it? Was there a particular offer? Was there an acceptance? Was there an agreement? No. I am doing something naturally, voluntarily for you without your asking me to do that. In that case, can I charge consideration from you? Of course not. So consideration cannot be for a voluntary act. Another example could be, chalo, there is a car which is kept and Mr. X goes to the car and starts washing it while the owner is around. He starts washing it and then he goes and tells the owner, ki you're supposed to pay me money for this. That also cannot be done because here the act done by Mr. X was voluntary. Okay, so for voluntary situations, you cannot force the other person to pay. So it must move at the desire of the promisor and not at the desire of the third party or the promisee. Plus, the act must not be voluntary. There should be a proper offer made. There should be an acceptance to that offer, which forms an agreement. And then the essential elements adding to the particular offer or acceptance will make it a valid contract. Moving on to point 2, where I have written FAQ. FAQ is a frequently asked question, and I think I would put this under the category of a case study question as well. And we'll understand how the case study question works, but let's read the heading. It may proceed from the promisee or any other person. Now, desire is of the promisor, but consideration may proceed from the promisee or any other person. I'll give you a general example before we go into the case that ICAI has given us. It's a very wonderful case. It's a landmark case, in fact. But generally, let's say that you and I go to a restaurant. Okay. Now here there are two parties. Promisor happens to be the restaurant which is giving us yum delicious food, and we are the promisee who are going to have to pay for it. Now, when the promisor gives us the food, when the hotel or the restaurant serves the food to us, I am consuming the food, you are also consuming the food. Payment, let's assume, is made by me. Promisee is making the payment here. But you are also someone who is receiving the benefit from the restaurant. You are not paying for the same. That is okay. There is another individual that is paying, which takes us to this point. It may proceed from the promisee or it may proceed from some other person. Chalo, we both are sitting, a third person comes and pays for us. What a nice day, right? So a third person comes and pays for us. But we are the ones who have received the benefit. Still doesn't matter. As long as consideration is involved in the contract, it may proceed from the promisee or it may proceed from any other person. And let's now look into the landmark case there is. I will draw this case for you and then you can refer the material because it's a little technical, so I want you to give me your undivided attention for this one, okay? Chalo. There was an old lady. Okay? This old lady is intending to give a gift to her daughter. But this gift comes with an instruction or a direction. It's like a condition which the daughter has to abide by. So the old lady tells the daughter, okay, I will give you this gift. I will give you the property that I intend to give you, provided the daughter pays her uncle, not the old lady's uncle, the daughter's maternal uncle, a sum of X rupees per annum. This is the condition given by the old lady, that the daughter will get the property provided per year she pays some amount to the uncle. And this daughter at that point agreed to do that. She made a promise in writing that she will pay a certain sum annually to her uncle. So let's make this daughter the promisor because she has promised to do something for the uncle. And since our uncle is at the receiving end of this, we'll make him the promisee. Now there was a period where the daughter got the property and now came the time to pay. Did the daughter pay? No. The daughter denied the payment to the uncle, though she had made a promise. And the daughter's argument was कि if she is giving money to the uncle, at that point, where is the consideration from the uncle? The uncle is not giving her anything. Now go back to the heading and see what it says. Consideration may proceed from the promisee or any other person. The condition that the daughter was given the gift on was that she has to pay the uncle, and she promised to do so. So now, is the uncle doing something in return for her at this point? No. But that something in return was done by the old lady. So this old lady here becomes any other person or some other person. It's not like the consideration directly proceeded from the promisee, but it proceeded from some other person. So the court ruled the case in favor of the uncle, saying that the daughter would have to stand up to her word, stand up to her promise, and make sure that per annum she pays the uncle, because that was the condition on which she got the property from some other person. So here consideration for the daughter was not given by the uncle, it was given by that some other person, and still this contract is absolutely valid. So as long as the consideration is from the desire of the promiser, which was her desire, she promised to pay the uncle a certain sum of money per annum. So the desire was of the daughter, okay, promiser, but the consideration may proceed from the promisee or it may proceed from any other person. So as long as these two conditions are fulfilled, the consideration is absolutely valid. This was our point 2 under legal rules of a valid consideration. Let's proceed to point 3. Something seems to be up with the application today, but I hope it does not come in the way of your studying. Yes, the name of the case, Chinnaya versus Ramaya. This is a case law that I would want you to remember. Chinnaya versus Ramaya. The case is explained here as well. The daughter promised to do so in writing. Ultimately, the daughter did not pay, so the uncle sued her. And when the daughter argued that there was no consideration from the uncle, the court ruled the case in favor of the uncle, saying that consideration here came from some other person, which is the old lady. Please remember the name of this case law, Chinnaya versus Ramaya. And this alone could be a case study question. When we practice a couple of questions from the institute material and from the past year question papers, I will make you remember this section again. Third point is simple because you're fundamentally strong from your unit 1. Consideration can be executed or executory. Executed ka matlab is that it's completed, executory yet to be completed. So taking the simple example here, the example has me, the example has Mr. X, who is a lender. Mr. X lent me some money, so that is Mr. X ka obligation. What is my obligation when somebody lends that money to me? It is to repay that. Now Mr. X ka obligation on his part, he has already lent the money to me. So it becomes executed. Say he's lent rupees 1 lakh to me. So his part in this particular contract is completed. It is executed. Whereas my duty, my obligation is yet to be performed. What is my obligation in this particular scenario? It is the repayment of the principal plus the interest amount. So principal plus interest, that repayment part on my part is executory, yet to be performed. So consideration can be executed, consideration could also be executory. Fundamentally very simple. Alright, point 4 says consideration may be past, present or future. Okay, very simple concept. Suppose a party has done something for you today. Okay? Say these are two parties, Mr. X and Mr. Y. Mr. X has sold goods on credit. Say a credit period of 6 months. Okay, he's given goods to Mr. Y. What is Y's obligation now? To make the payment after a period of 6 months. So now when Y pays after 6 months, that is for a past consideration, once upon a time consideration. Suppose we are talking about cash sales. You make the payment, you receive the goods. That becomes present consideration. Okay? It's a very simple point. No need to stress much on this one. Consideration may be past, it may be present, or it may be future. Now the fifth one is what is going to be something which is important for you even from the case study perspective, which says consideration need not be adequate. Now go back to the meaning of consideration. What does consideration mean? Something in return. Is something defined anywhere so far? We have studied about a couple of rules and the introductory part. Something is not defined anywhere. So what is something? Let's say this mug. Okay, I'm selling this mug to you and you are willing to buy it. And the price that I'm quoting for this mug is 1 rupee. Are you ready to pay for it? Assuming you are ready, just because this mug is sold for something as basic as 1 rupee, does it invalidate our agreement? Of course not. As long as I am ready to sell it to you for 1 rupee, what is the problem? If there is free consent, if we both have the capacity to contract and all our other essential elements are valid. Same way if I want to sell my iPad, okay, say for 50 rupees. As long as my consent is free. Of course, this iPad is not worth 50 rupees. It is much more than 50 rupees. But here, something in return which you are giving me for an iPad is not equal to what I am giving you. Irrespective of that, the validity of the consideration shall not be affected because of point 5. Point 5 says consideration need not be adequate. Need not be adequate. Adequate matlab equal. So what you're giving and what you're receiving need not be equal in life also and in law also. So something in return need not be equal to something that is given, provided the consent should be free. Now you can't hold a gun on my head and say give me this iPad for 50 rupees. That will break the validity of the contract because consent is not free. But if my consent is there and if all the other essential elements are being followed, then as long as something in return is there, something. What is something? Anything to which the law can attach some value. 1 rupee, 1 lakh, 1 crore, kuch bhi ho. Something should be there, but it should be something to which the law would regard as having value, and that will make it a valid contract. Important concept. Point 6. Point 6 is a very interesting one. It should not be the performance of what one is legally bound to perform. Chalo, let's take an example here. Say I'm teaching you business law for a sum of rupees 5,000. Okay, assuming. Now, couple of classes into the contract being performed, I tell you, I will teach you properly only if you pay me an additional 4,000 rupees. Now tell me my duty as a teacher. Is it to teach you or is it to teach you properly? Obviously, it is to teach you properly from the very beginning. So can I charge you extra consideration to do something that I'm legally bound to already do? Then it cannot be a valid consideration. So it should not be something for what a person is already supposed to do. You cannot pay them extra consideration for that. Now if you go to a lawyer, you can't tell a lawyer ki if you fight the case for me, I will pay you X amount of money. But if you win the case for me, I will pay you X plus 5,000 rupees. Now that does not make sense because a lawyer's duty is to represent you as well as to try and win the case for you in the capacity that he is able to. So if you are paying something to somebody to do something that they are already legally supposed to do, it does not make sense. But if the person is going out of their way, suppose they are teaching something additionally or suppose they are performing some additional duty which is not a part of their legal duty, then you can pay them extra consideration for that. But for what he is already supposed to do, you can pay them a decent amount of consideration, what is decided, but you cannot pay them something extra for what they are already supposed to do. So it should not be the performance of what one is legally bound to perform, unless he performs more than what he is legally bound to. If he performs more than what he is legally bound to, you are allowed to pay them consideration and that will be valid. But to do something that they are already supposed to do, you cannot make them pay additional consideration. That was point 6. Point 7 and 8 are very simple, very easily we can finish it off. Consideration must be real. Of course, it has to be real. But when we say real here, it is not real for you, it is not real for me. It is what is real in the eyes of law. So it must be real and it must not be illusory. Illusory here refers to imaginary. It cannot be imaginary. It should not be legally or physically impossible. If it is legally or physically impossible, then it is not real in the eyes of law. Adequacy is not important, but it has to exist. Now, if I tell you I am giving you this mug, in return you have to perform some magic for me. Okay, that cannot make sense because magic is not real in the eyes of law. But if I'm ready to sell this mug to you for even 10 rupees, that makes it absolutely a valid contract. So consideration must be real and not illusory. It should not be imaginary. At the same point, at the same time, consideration must not be unlawful or immoral or opposed to public policy. Unlawful, you're familiar with the word. It should not be immoral. It should not be opposed to public policy. And these are the 8 essential elements or the legal rules for consideration to be valid. Only if all of these legal rules are implied and followed, okay, they are complied with, only then the contract, the consideration that is involved in the contract will become valid. It's a very important topic. Could be asked as a descriptive question as well if it's your lucky day. But otherwise, I generally feel key point 2. It may proceed from the promisee or any other person. That could be a case study question. Point 5. Consideration need not be adequate. That could also be asked as a case study question. Point 6.2, in fact, it should not be the performance of what one is legally bound to perform. These 3 could be areas of case study questions, and the others also are important, but you could make sure that these 3 points are studied by you a little more in detail. Alright, we are proceeding to the next topic in this unit of consideration. Going back to our section 10, essential elements of a valid contract. We learned 2 points relating to consideration. If you remember, consideration is an essential element for a valid contract. No consideration, no contract. As simple as that. And we also learned that consideration must be lawful. Okay? Now, no consideration, no contract. This is a general rule in law. Section 10 says consideration is an essential element, and there is a general rule that an agreement made without consideration is void. So if there is no consideration, the agreement is void. Now, every general rule in life as well as in law has to have an exception. So the exceptions to this above rule are given to us under section 25 and a couple of other sections. And section 25 talks about contracts which are valid even without consideration. Yes, you heard it absolutely correctly. We did learn so far that if there is no consideration involved, the agreement will not be a valid agreement. It will not be a valid contract at all. But in this case, we are going to learn now a few cases where even if consideration is not present, okay, the absence of consideration will not affect the validity of this following contracts that we are studying, and they will be valid even without consideration. All the points are absolutely logical. Remember, logic. Okay, so keeping this as our base, let's start with point 1 under section 25. Subsection 1. Yes, subsections are important here, and it is easy to remember, which is why I'm stressing on it, because this happens to be one of Institute's favorite questions, so we cannot take any chance here. The first point says, any contract which is made out of natural love and affection. Natural love and affection is valid even without consideration. Let's take an example here. There is me, party number 1. And chalo, इस example के लिए I have 3 kids, K, V and C. And I have made a will for my kids wherein my property shall get transferred to them on certain conditions. ठीक है? Now this particular agreement or contract that I have made with my lawyer, it is written, it is registered. There is a near relation between me and the person to whom I'm transferring the property. These are my kids, so there is near relation. And it also comprises of natural love and affection. So now my kids will get this property even if consideration is not involved on their part, and the validity of this particular agreement shall not get affected simply because consideration is missing in this contract. So there are a few conditions to be fulfilled under section 25 subsection 1, and I want you to remember all the 4 conditions. Very simple conditions. The contract shall be written, it shall be registered, the relationship between the parties should be very tight, very near, and it shall involve natural love and affection. So this was section 25 subsection 1. We are talking about validity of contracts even without the presence of consideration. Natural love and affection being the first one. The second one, compensation for past voluntary services. Now in the beginning, I remember telling you that consideration should not be voluntary. Okay, but here let's see why they have specifically mentioned this point with the help of an example. You and DV are 2 parties in this contract. Case 1, you have found my lost wallet and given it to me. How sweet of you. I hope you're like this even to other people, but you found my lost wallet and you've given it to me. Now I feel very grateful that someone actually returned my wallet to me. So I feel like rewarding them. Chalo, I know I didn't ask you to search for my wallet or figure it out or do anything of that sort. On your own, voluntarily, you came and gave me my wallet. And I was very happy. You know, there are very few people in this world who would still want to be this nice. So in return, without being asked to do so, I promise to give you 1000 rupees for the same. I need not have, but I feel like, because your gesture was extremely nice, I feel like returning the favor and I promise to give you 1000 rupees. Now technically, I didn't ask you to search for the wallet or anything like that. So consideration is not involved here, but you can hold me accountable for the promise that I have made towards you. I clearly told you that I will give you 1000 rupees and you have the right to claim that 1000 rupees from me because I have made that promise. But there are 4 conditions here as well. So let's look at conditions under section 25 subsection 2. First, the service that you're rendering to me shall be rendered voluntarily. Second, the service shall be rendered for the promisor. Now, when I promise to give you something as a reward, I become the promisor and your service was rendered for me. So, it shall be rendered for the promisor. The promisor must be in existence at that time. Yes, I was in existence. I am in existence. And the last one, the promisor intends to compensate the promisee. See, when you find my wallet and give it to me, there is nothing written in a rule book that I have to give you something in return for what you did. But because I like that gesture, I am giving you 1000 rupees. Now that I have intended to compensate you for what you did for me voluntarily, I cannot back out on the grounds that, hey, there is no consideration, you're not doing anything for me in return. So I should have intended to compensate you. And if these 4 conditions are fulfilled, section 25 subsection 2 says that compensation for past voluntary services is going to be a valid contract even if consideration is not involved. Moving on, section 25 subsection 3. Now there are 2 ways that you can study this particular point. One, exam point of view. One, knowledge point of view. And if you know me, you will know how I'm going to teach you this. Obviously, I want you to learn it from the knowledge point of view because you know which question is important. Fundamentally, why? We will learn why, and once we apply the why, the logic is very clear to us, and once the logic is clear to us, the law will also become very clear to us. So let's start with a story. And this story involves 2 people, Kiran sir, KV, and Deepika, DV. As usual, I want money. Always. Okay, my answer to that question, if you want money, is always under any situation going to be yes. So DV here has taken a loan of rupees 2 lakhs from KV. I am the borrower, KV sir is the lender. And I've taken this loan on 31st of October 2023 for a period of 1 year. So my due date for repayment is 31st October 2024. Now look at me. Look at this innocent face and tell me, on the due date, will I make the repayment? No, I won't. So on the due date, DV failed to repay the loan. What can Kiran sir do? KV sir can file a case on me. Of course, he can file a case on me. But we have a law in our country called as the Limitation Act 1963 under the Statute of Limitations, which says that the time limit to file a case in this matter is 3 years from the date of failure to repay. What was that date of failure to repay? 31st October 2024. When I failed to repay, from that day, I have defaulted on the money part of it. Now, from that day, KV sir has got 3 years to file a case on me, which means up to 31st October 2027, he can file a case on me. Correct? But if KV does not file a case within those 3 years, if KV sir does not file a case within those 3 years, what happens to that debt? That debt becomes a time barred debt. What is a time barred debt? A debt which is barred or restricted simply because the time period of the lender to file a case on the borrower has lapsed, and such a debt is called as a time barred debt. Now, once the debt becomes time barred, what will happen? KV sir legally cannot file a claim on me to repay that amount of loan which I have taken from him. This is according to the Limitation Act 1963. Now, this was some background information. Now that you've understood the concept of time barred debt, let's see how it is applicable here. Section 25 subsection 3 says, a promise to pay a time barred debt is valid even without consideration. Now, once a debt becomes time barred, legally though it is not enforceable, Kiran sir cannot come and claim it from me. But let's say in an alternative universe, okay, after the debt has become a time barred debt, there is this guilty conscience that exists in some of us. I know. In some of us, there is this guilty conscience that exists, and let's say in this example, it exists in me also. So I feel a little guilty because he has helped me when I needed the money, and now that, it is my duty to repay it to him, I backed out from my duty, which is not fair. It is not lawful. And we follow law in both letter and spirit. So I decide to make a written promise to him and to repay that 2 lakh rupees, though I need not. Why do I not have to worry about it? Because that debt has become time barred now. He cannot do anything. But remember, guilty conscience. एक conscious होता है which tells you कि boss, you're doing something wrong, and if you want to sleep well at night, please change that. So I decide to make a written promise to him to pay that 2 lakh rupees. And when I make this written promise to him, is he giving me something in return? No, he's not giving me something in return. But the promise which I have made to him, a written promise, okay? The word written is important here. It should be a written promise. And now that I've made that written promise to him, I have to keep up to that promise, and that promise can become legally enforceable by him. So any promise to pay a debt which is time barred is valid even without consideration according to section 25 subsection 3. And the condition here is it should be in writing. So 3 sections so far which came under section 25. Section 25 subsection 1, natural love and affection. Section 25 subsection 2, compensation for past voluntary services, and section 25 subsection 3, a written promise to pay a debt which is barred by time. Now let's continue with point 4, creation of agency. Now, creation of agency involves a little bit of information for you to understand. You must have heard of agent. ठीक है? Who is an agent? An agent is a middleman between two people. And who are those two people? One person is called as the principal and another person is called as the third party. ठीक है? So principal is an individual who appoints an agent, and the relationship that these two people share, the principal and the agent, that relationship is called as agency. Now, how is it relevant here? This is a whole unit, by the way, for you under Indian Contract Act. Unit 9 talks about agency. Entire unit is about agency. So we will learn conceptually everything even there. And once you learn that unit, of course, this is automatically a part of that. But fir bhi, let's understand it now. Who appoints the agent? Principal. So our principal here is appointing the agent. So principal is doing something. At this point, what is the agent doing for the principal? Is there something in return on part of the agent? No. All that agent is doing is theek hai. He is accepting that appointment by the principal. See, don't get confused. When the agent works for the principal is going to give him something in return. This is a separate contract altogether, section 2H contract. But at the time of appointment, the agency is merely getting formed. Agent is not doing anything in return for the principal, but still that agency is valid. So in this case, what is happening? Agency is getting created. So our point 4 says creation of agency. ठीक है? According to Indian Contract Act, creation of agency does not require consideration. Execution of agency will require consideration. Obviously, the agent is not going to work for the principal for free, but creation of agency need not involve consideration according to section 185. Is the section number important? Yes, it is. But we'll see that in unit 9. So if the principal is merely appointing the agent is not giving something in return to the principal at that point, still the agency that is created between the principal and agent is valid even without consideration. Point 5 is very simple, completed gift. Any gift ka contract which is present between two people need not involve consideration. The sound of gift itself is making me happy. Chalo, point 6, simple again, charity. Okay, let me give you an example here. So, in our example, let's say Mr. X promises to donate, say 1 lakh rupees to an organization. And based on the promise that Mr. X made, yes, it is donation. There is no need of consideration here in case of charity. But based on this promise that Mr. X has made to the organization went into repairing the building, which was required. And they spent around 70,000 on the repairs. Now, Mr. X backs out. But the organization has already spent that 70,000. Can they proceed against Mr. X? Can they file a case against Mr. X? Yes, they can, because this was a contract of charity. Of course, in the scenario, certain technicalities may also be involved. Remember other formalities. So if we go to see that part, can also come into light. But a contract of charity is going to be valid even without consideration. Our last point under this exceptions is bailment. Bailment is also a whole unit that you will have to study under Unit 8. And I love this concept of bailment, because we don't even know, but we have been entering into contracts of bailment ever since we could even communicate between two people. So, do you remember these fancy dress competitions that we would have to participate as kids in school, where we go to different centers and pick up costumes on rent? Not just fancy dress, it could be even for a dance competition. Okay, you obviously will not have those jig dresses in your houses. So you go, and so that everyone is in uniformity, you pick up costumes for everyone. Good days in school. But what we didn't realize that time is that we are entering into contracts of bailment. Now, this is the second time I'm using this word. So let's understand the meaning of bailment first. Please do not get confused between the bail, jail wala bail. That jail wala bail is a different concept, and sometimes I wish criminal law was also a part of your syllabus. But for now, we'll stick to business law. Now we're proceeding to the meaning of bailment. So going back to that fancy dress wala example, say I was participating, and let's say my parents, I think in 4th standard, for some weird reason, decided that I should become a pencil in that fancy dress competition. Yes, you heard it right, pencil. That too, Nataraj pencil. I have nothing against Nataraj, but why would you voluntarily want your child to become a Nataraj pencil? So uske liye we had to get some red costume and a black attire and all of that, and we went to pick that up on rent. Because obviously after the competition it was absolutely of no use. So when I picked it up for rent, I picked it up merely for that competition. And I think, I don't know, but I'm guessing, chalo, 100 rupees hoga. We paid a rent for about 2 days, 100 rupees. And I'm not going to talk more about that event. It was a disaster for me. But after that event got over, we had to go and return the costume that we picked up. Now that returning part happened because the purpose for which I had borrowed it came to an end. So this concept is called as bailment. Not that fancy dress part, but this part. Delivery of goods from one person to another for a purpose. The purpose here was the fancy dress competition. So delivery of goods from one person to another for the purpose, and post the accomplishment of that purpose, those particular goods shall be returned or disposed of according to the instructions. For now, we'll understand the return part of it, because this part I'll teach you in Unit 8. So, one person giving goods to another for a particular purpose, and then you returning those goods to that person after the accomplishment of that particular purpose is called as bailment. Now, the example that I gave you, I got costumes from the shop and uske liye I gave 100 rupees. So that was with consideration. It was with something in return. Now, if it's with something in return, it is anyway valid. But this point tells us that even if it is without consideration, the bailment will still be valid. Now, KV sir is fascinated with bikes. Okay, I know this is only possible in examples for me, but let's say I ask Kiran sir, could you lend your bike to me for 2 days? And in that example, or it's my lucky day, and he says yes. Now, KV sir, I know, will not charge consideration from me or take rental charges for me if it's for a period of 2 days. So I take his bike. Now, is it my duty to return the bike to him after those 2 days? Or if I don't return and scoot away with it, at the time when he catches me, can I say, boss, there was no consideration, there was no contract, you can't file a case on me? Of course I cannot, because of this exception. Even though there was no consideration involved between us, the contract can still be valid. So, bailment says that if the contract exists with consideration, so anyway it is valid. But even if it's without consideration, it is going to be valid. And these were our exceptions to the general rule. The general rule being that if there is no consideration, there is no valid contract. But in these exceptions, the contract is going to be valid even with the absence of consideration. Section 25 subsection 1 natural love and affection. Section 25 subsection 2, compensation for past voluntary services. Section 25 subsection 3, promise to pay a time barred debt provided it is in writing. Section 25 gets completed there. Point 4, creation of an agency. Do not miss out on the word creation. Creation of an agency. Point 5, completed gift. 6th, charity. And 7th, bailment. Okay, with this we'll move on to the next topic, the final topic under unit 2. Interesting again, suit by a third party to a contract. A contract generally has how many parties? 2 parties. Okay. Now a third person here does not mean number 3. A third person means a stranger. Okay, when we say third person here, we are not talking about the party number 3. We are talking about a stranger. Can a stranger to a contract come and interfere in a contract? No, a contract is between 2 people, and if at all there is an issue, or if at all something needs to be solved, it has to be between those 2 people. You cannot involve a stranger to a contract according to the general rule. But we just discovered that general rules have exceptions. So we are going to study exceptions here, where a stranger to a contract can sue, only in those exceptional cases. So let's move on to this topic. Topic number 3, important topic, has been asked by the institute as a direct question once, and even as a case study question for 2 points. So let's begin. A stranger to a contract cannot sue, and this in law is called as the doctrine of privity of contract. I'll repeat, stranger to a contract cannot sue, and this is called as a doctrine of privity of contract. What we are going to study now are exceptions to this general rule, and in the general rule, a stranger to a contract can sue. Only in these exceptional cases a stranger can sue. Let's start with the first one. In case of a trust. Now, when we are studying this topic, I want you to understand the examples, because then it is going to be easier for you to remember why a stranger to a contract can sue. So follow the example with me. For the better understanding, I'll tell you in advance that every example that we have, written there, I have written 1, 2, 3, etc. So here we are talking about 1 and 2 being the parties to the contract, and 3 will become the stranger to the contract. So let's start. In case of a trust. Now, what is this trust we are talking about here? It is not that mutual trust that exists between 2 parties. We are talking about organizations. Remember, charitable trusts or any trust that is created for the benefit of somebody. That's the general meaning of a trust. So, let's say there is a trust or a contract that is created between 2 people. Party number 1 being the author. Author is a person who is responsible or designated with the responsibility of creation of a trust. So we have party number 1, author, party number 2, trustee. Now these 2 people create the trust, and trust is an organization which is created for the benefit of a third person, our beneficiary. Party number 1 is author, party number 2 is trustee, but beneficiary here is a stranger who ultimately will get affected by the contract. So does it make sense to allow the beneficiary to interfere in the contract? Obviously yes. Suppose there is an issue or a dispute or anything for that matter that happens between the original 2 parties to the contract, the stranger to the contract, being the beneficiary here, can interfere. So even though the beneficiary is a stranger to a contract, since it is a case involving trust, the beneficiary can absolutely interfere. Point 2, in case of a family settlement. Okay, let's take the example here. We have 2 parties, X and Y. And these 2 parties have agreed to pay an allowance to the mother on the partition of joint properties. Okay, they have joint properties. So X and Y are 2 brothers who have decided ki chalo, let us pay a certain amount, an allowance to the mother on the partition of the joint properties. Now who is the stranger here? Who is the third party here? Who is the beneficiary here? the mother. So in any given point, the mother can also interfere in this contract between X and Y, though technically she is a stranger to the contract. Third one, in case of certain marriage contracts, I'm specifically underlining the word certain, and let's understand this with the help of an example. Okay? Simple example. So let's make our concept very strong. We have X, who is the husband of Miss Y here. So X is married to Y, X is the husband, Y is the wife. But there is an agreement between the husband and the husband's father. That is Mr. X ka father, Mr. Z. What is the agreement? They agree that in the event of divorce between X and Y, X will pay a monthly allowance to Miss Y, okay, as a settlement. And another point is, Z agrees to pay if X fails to pay. So there is a husband-wife and there is an agreement that there is a point that suppose there is a divorce between X and Y, X is going to pay a monthly allowance to the ex-wife. Now, suppose the husband, ex-husband, that is X here, fails to pay that monthly allowance. Who is going to pay it on behalf of the husband? The husband's father, here being Mr. Z, is going to pay a sum to Miss Y. So, the two parties to the contract are the husband and the husband's father. But who is benefiting here? Miss Y is benefiting here. So, can Miss Y interfere in this contract? Yes. Though she is a stranger to this contract, Miss Y can interfere in the contract between X and Z, which is X's father. So this was our third point in case of certain marriage contracts. First one, in case of a trust. Second, in case of family settlement. Third, in case of certain marriage contracts. We have a few more points left. Again, we're going to study each one conceptually. So let's move on to point 4. In case of assignment of a contract. Now, this is not your college assignment wala assignment. Assignment here is transferring something. What are you transferring? You are transferring a benefit. Assignment of a benefit. Let's take an example for the same. Stay with me in the example. We have KVC, party number 1, who is supposed to pay a sum of rupees 1 lakh to DV. Who is DV? Party number 2. So who are the two parties in the contract? KVC and DV. KVC has to pay 1 lakh rupees to DV. Now for DV, this is a benefit. Okay? But what is DV doing? DV is assigning the benefit to Mr. X. Assuming that I owe Mr. X, what I decide to do? I decide to assign that benefit where I am supposed to receive money from KVC. I decide to assign that benefit to Mr. X. So DV assigns the benefit to Mr. X, and now who is KVC supposed to pay? KVC is supposed to pay Mr. X. Obviously, there has to be a proof or an instrument which is transferring this benefit. But the two parties to the contract originally were KVC and DV. Now, when KVC is supposed to pay Mr. X, if KVC refuses to pay, can Mr. X, being a stranger to the contract between KVC and DV, interfere in this contract? The answer is yes, because this was assignment of a benefit, assignment of a contract. Then in that case, a third party, being Mr. X here, the stranger, can also interfere in the contract between the original two parties. So this was point 4. Point 5, an interesting point, something that I would want you to remember conceptually as well. Acknowledgement or estoppel. What is this estoppel? What is this acknowledgement or estoppel? This word now that I'm going to teach you now, estoppel, we are going to learn it so thoroughly now that irrespective of the chapter it gets repeated in, which it will get. It will get repeated in Unit 3, it will get repeated in multiple other acts that we are going to ever study. So I want you to build this concept so clearly in your minds that the meaning of this concept is thorough right now so that in the next few chapters you will automatically understand the concept. Estoppel matlab preventing somebody from contradicting or denying what has already been established as a fact or law. Simple terms में, what is estoppel? Estoppel is to stop. Stopping them from doing what? Stopping them from changing their original statement. Suppose I declare a holiday tomorrow for all my students. ठीक है? I'm telling them कि कल छुट्टी है, आराम करो. Your body needs it, your mind needs it. And after a few hours, I was like, अच्छा, I think if I give them a holiday, they will lose focus. So I go and tell them, बस statement बदल देंगी. I want to change that statement. You are not getting a holiday. Please come to class tomorrow at 8 a.m. You think my students will listen to me? Would you listen to me if you were sitting in my class? No, you would tell me, ma'am, you said कि you are not keeping class and you already told us that is a holiday. Please do not change your statement. What did you do? You stopped me from contradicting what I established as a fact already. So that is called as estoppel. Now let us see how is estoppel relevant here. Classic example. We have our guru Vijay Mallya sir. Vijay Mallya, party number 1, paid money to his agent. Who is an agent? A middleman. ठीक है? Here, party number 2, Mr. A. So Vijay Mallya has paid money to Mr. A and told Mr. A कि you are supposed to give this money to the bank, who is a third party, a stranger. Vijay Mallya gives money to Mr. A and asks A to give it to the bank. Point 2, A, our agent here, goes to the bank physically and acknowledges the debt. He tells the bank कि Vijay Mallya sir has given me this amount to hand it over to you. He has gone and acknowledged to the bank that he holds the money which is given by Vijay Mallya. After that acknowledgement, suddenly पता नहीं क्या होता है, but A refuses to pay. Now I know the contract was between Vijay Mallya and agent, where Vijay Mallya has told agent, go and give this money to the bank. But agent has gone and involved the bank. Now, the minute he goes and acknowledges it in the bank, he holds the money and he has to give it to the bank, he is making the bank a part of this. He's making the bank aware of this. So though bank is the third party here, a stranger here to the original contract, the bank can interfere in this contract. The agent here is stopped from denying or contradicting what he established as a fact earlier, and that was point 5, acknowledgement or estoppel. So here also a stranger to a contract can interfere. Point 6, contracts entered into by an agent. We learned just a while ago who is an agent, a person who is appointed by the principal. So here we have our principal, we have our agent, and principal appoints the agent to do some work. Now this agent has gone and entered into a contract, section 2H, hero. He's gone and entered into a contract with the customer. So the contract is between the agent and the customer. But who is this agent working for? The agent is working for the principal. So yes, principal is a third party here. Yes, the principal is a stranger, but the agent is working for the principal. So principal, though here is a stranger to a contract, can interfere in the contract between the agent and the customer. A very simple point, simple example as well. The last point. This point has been asked as a case study question by our institute several times. Covenants running with the land. This is the actual point. Covenant running with the land, or in simple terms here, conditions attached to the land. Whatever I have written in bracket, that is the simple meaning of the same. Conditions attached to the land. Yes, let's make our concept more clear with the help of an example. Okay, pay attention here. You can keep the example open in your material simultaneously, but for this one, follow what I'm doing here. We have government या कोई भी party ले लो, ठीक है? I'm taking government who owns a piece of land which they want to sell. The government wants to sell this land. And this land is located right in the middle of the city. So it has certain terms and conditions कि no factory or no industry or anything that could cause pollution or could harm the surroundings can be constructed in this land. That is a condition given by the owner, the government. And can an offer be conditional? Unit 1? Yes, an offer can be conditional. So when the government puts out this information कि they want to sell a land, we have a buyer here, buyer number 1, who is okay with following that condition, and he purchases the land from the government. So now our buyer 1 becomes the owner of this land, and he abides by the condition properly without any fuss. Now say 20 years later, 20 years is a random example, but 20 years later, this buyer 1 decides that this land is of no use to him anymore, and he decides to further sell it. And he sold it to buyer number 2. So our fresh contract, the second sale, is between buyer number 1 and between buyer number 2. Now this buyer number 2, when he picks up the land, he builds a factory on the land. Is this breaking the original condition? Yes. And was that a condition of the contract or was it a condition of the land? It was a condition attached to the land. Now our third party, our stranger, the government here, is interfering in this contract. Can the buyer 2 say, boss, you are not a party to the contract, you cannot interfere in this contract? No, the government has full right to interfere in this contract between the two buyers because the condition here was attached to the land. So though the government is a stranger here, though the government is a third party, because it was a covenant running with the land or condition attached to the land, they can interfere in this contract. The government interfered and the condition was attached to the land, therefore it is absolutely valid. Next second. Yes, that was the last point for us in the final topic under Unit 2. What does Unit 2 talk about? Suit by a third party. Who is a third party here? What is a suit? Suit is a case. Okay, don't forget that. Suit by a third party. Stranger to a contract cannot sue, which is the general rule called the doctrine of privity of contract. But in the 7 cases that we saw, a stranger can interfere in the contract between the two parties. The last one is an extremely important point. And with this, we conclude our Unit 2. Quite an important topic, shorter topic compared to a lot of the other chapters we are studying. Just a gist of whatever we studied so far. First, we started with the meaning of consideration. Something in return, quid pro quo in Latin, a price which is agreed to be paid by the promisee for the duty or the obligation of the promisor. This is called as consideration. So we finished the meaning. We also saw 8 legal rules for a valid consideration. And we also saw 1 case law there. If you remember point 2, consideration may proceed from the promisee or any other person. What was the case law that we studied? Chinnaya versus Ramaya. Then we studied certain exceptions. Section 10 says consideration important hai. Without consideration, contract is not possible. But then comes to our rescue a few other sections, an exception to the above rule, and these exceptions tell us that even if consideration is missing, the contract is still going to be valid even without consideration, but only in those 7 cases, okay? And the last one, we studied the concept of doctrine of privity of contract, which states that a stranger to a contract cannot sue, except in those 7 exceptional cases. And in these exceptional cases, the stranger to a contract can interfere as well. So this was Unit 2, consideration. Before you begin the video of Unit 3, my suggestion to you would be to make your concepts of Unit 2 absolutely thorough so that Unit 3 becomes all the more clear to you. So study unit 2 today or tomorrow, but keep studying it, and we shall commence with unit 3 very shortly.